If you wanted to wire a data center, it would future-proof you at least for 20 years. We give a 25-year warranty and application guarantee to those speeds, and you'll never have to replace the infrastructure.
How do we help them deploy an infrastructure today that is going to be able to easily transition to those MMC connectors for at least the portions that are feeding the GPUs?
All right, here we are again, Kenny. Good to see you.
We wanted to talk about, hopefully, for the folks out there that are seeing the podcast, they're also following us on LinkedIn. If you're not, please do. But if you are, you've seen recently some posts from us about an ACE assessment. So ACE just is is Airspan, C is for Corning, and E is for Eaton, right? The three solid companies that we represent. But we wanted to talk about what that
Easy
means.
as ABC, right?
Exactly. So we, it's I'll say the crystallization of how we've always operated with servicing our customers and speaking with them about projects and what is needed for those projects, right? But it's a pretty simple a simple mindset in terms of how we've operated and how we can help. But essentially, it's bringing the resources to bear from our team at ABC, but also the subject matter experts for the companies that we represent, and bringing them in early in the process, whether there's a project or whether it's a continual education and updating on products that are out there and available that could help a successful deployment. One of the things that is part of this as well is the team of partners that we have in the engineering community who have always been a part of that equation. And on any given project, we could be sitting at a table or on a Teams call at this point with folks that represent the end user, the engineering firm, the manufacturers that we represent, and the installers, the integrators, and everybody in between, right? So everybody's kind of contributing and understands, and everybody's on the same page, right? But again, it's kind of the formal crystallization of what we've been doing, for years. And Eddie, you've been doing this longer than I have, and clearly I learned, a lot of this and the value of these relationships as well. So you can speak to this, more than I can as well. But clearly, it's something that I learned early on was how much value was put in to the relationships that we have, and being a part of those discussions to really kind of help with the design as well.
Yeah, I want to jump in there because it's an interesting phenomenon, and again, we are celebrating our 40th year this year. So you say we've been doing it a long time. We have, and one of the things I'm still miffed about is you know is in the good old days, it was door to door selling, and it was face to face selling, and you know, pay phones, and you wonder how we got it done, right? And how do you broadcast a message, and how do you talk to the community? And the only way was to knock on doors, and the quintessential, salesperson, right? Oh my God, another salesperson knocking at my door. Again, that picture. I have no time for salespeople. So I always scratch my head to say it's hard because, it's like if you're in anything, if you're looking for a doctor, right? How do I find the right doctor and a good doctor? And I'm sticking with my doctor, but if I change doctors, how do I know? But in today's world, we could reach audiences unbelievable. We broadcast, email, LinkedIn. We are all over the place, and I could use AI to say, "Hey, give me the best doctor in the area," or if I need a heart transplant, I want to go anywhere in the country. Who's the best, right? But there's none of that really in our industry, and I say that because I look at people like Corning, people like Eaton, who are committed like we are to the client, to service. And, people may not believe that because they say, oh, it's a big company, etc. But you and I know, having dealt with them a long time, that they really do, live to service and sell the products that are needed out there in the market to, to enhance things. And they have engineers and support. So the fact that, we started a campaign with a free power audit to the hospitals, for example, and very few take us up on that. And I'm just really stymied a little bit, because if you could get somebody to come in at no cost, who are experts in the field and are one of the three leading global companies on the planet, with this plethora of resources, to come in and say, hey, we've evaluated it. Here's some of the things here. It's kind of like the energy audit, at home. If I wanted to, I have a state program where I could bring somebody in and they could, tell me, is my house leaking? Is the power? Where is it? And, I did that personally myself and saved a lot of money, got a free interest loan, you know, and, life is better. So I want to encourage everybody out there to really, think outside the box these days and bring in people, cost you nothing. I know it's time, but we don't even need to bother people to do it, whether it be a power audit or whether it be a fiber audit, right? Or what's your fiber infrastructure look like? Could you be doing it better? What are some things? What are the new products out there, et cetera? So, our task is really to try to reach out to the community and get the opportunity to do these things. So I'm kind of preaching out there and hoping people listen and take us up on that. And, it's kind of, Grace and Sky, who's hosting us and our media campaigns and helping us do these broadcasts today. We paid them to come in and assess our company. What is it? And they came back and said, well, we really think that, you're losing opportunities with clients because you don't get there. You don't get to talk to them. We're seeing the fact that the people that you do talk to and that you do engage, that you get traction with them, and they see the value of that, and they start taking us on as partners and planning and staging and successful installs, whether it be, Airspan, Corning, or Eaton. So I'm just trying to get out there to the community, encourage them to say, hey, give us that opportunity to at least have an engagement, have a discussion. We don't think you'll be, any worse the wear for doing it. And, it, and we've gotten thrown out of places before. And if you don't want us, throw us out. That's fine. But at least given the opportunity of maybe taking advantage of some of the value props that could really bring your organization, major benefits. Go ahead, Karen.
So I kind of have a, I mean, I do have thoughts about the power assessment, and I do believe that we're going to see more of these done as we go through the year. But I think once a customer understands what the idea is behind this, and also I think sometimes it's hard, especially in New York City, for customers to understand, wait, you're going to do this for free? This is a value add that you guys are performing, right? So, and it's relatively easy
Yeah,
to do.
free,
But I think
free
we've
buses,
got,
free audits.
yeah, we've got a few that we've done at this point, and they've both been done, relatively recently. And I think now that we've been part of some of these things as well. We can help evangelize that, as well as our distribution partners, which in cases have brought us the opportunities also.
Okay,
But
you bring
just
up
to,
a good point, because you just recently went through one of these with a major client, and we don't
Mhm.
have to give the name out there, but maybe speak to that a little bit, because I think that
Sure.
kind of is to the point that you're speaking, right?
Yeah. So there's two different instances, but in one where uh, pretty sizable campus with a number of buildings on it, where some of the IDFs are much different, and other IDFs were pretty much the same. So essentially, we kind of started with a few of the key buildings, went through, um, literally took pictures of the IDFs, what equipment was there, um, and what the power looked like, what the feeds looked like, what would UPSs or PDUs need to be plugged into, and what the situation was. So once we did, probably maybe a tenth of the IDFs on the campus, customer came back and said, we need to do this for the entire campus. So we didn't, in that case, didn't have to go back there. They were able to look at what we had done and said, okay, we've got now 30 other IDFs that look just like this one. So boom, we had already done that. We put the bill of materials together for those. Some of them were slightly different, but at least we had the the information that we needed to put together more than just a budgetary proposal, but pretty refined bill of materials we can tweak if needed. But essentially, it was 3 or 4 hours with somebody walking around their campus and to different IDFs, and now leading to what will end up being over the next year and a half a complete upgrade of all the UPSs on their campus, right? So not only does it help them if they need to upgrade, but it also gives them visibility into, okay, this closet has a UPS that's 3 years into its life cycle. So we know we need to be looking at that particular unit another year from now, 2 years from now, right? Whatever the case may be. So it
Sure.
also
You have
gives
a
them
budget,
visibility
forecast,
into
plan, right?
exactly. So it helps them work into their budget, right? So this was a decent sized campus, but as you mentioned, specifically healthcare, you look at any of the healthcare systems in the city and or a college campus, right? So how many IDFs do they have
Mhm.
scattered across not only that location, but potentially, you know, many other locations across our
Yeah,
footprint, across the country,
yeah,
right? So again, I think it's sometimes, again, like I said, it's the thing I say about New York City is there are certain things where the folks that are making the decisions want to be at the forefront, and we want to be deploying the latest technology in certain cases, and then there's other cases where it's trying to turn an aircraft carrier
right, right,
quickly,
right.
right? It doesn't happen, right? It's the war of attrition, right? So uh,
Yeah, I think
I
one of
think
the things
that
that they found out through some of these audits, and I think bears to be true, especially in hospitals. Um, and when we talk about hospitals, obviously, there's all kinds of issues, right? The medically sealed rooms and the contagion, contaminants, etc. Um, but what we see a lot is that they're just buying, off the shelf, power strips, throwing them in the closet, plugging in a lot of stuff without any real sense of, the industry as far as how much power can you have, how much can it push, not only that power is not static, so you lose a lot of draw when you start adding these things on without any management. And to your point, they should get rid of all those power strips because they really should be used at the home under the desk of my laptop, maybe have four of them in my house, right? But not 16 of them on a rack hanging off, with all this equipment plugged in that's critical. And they're doing this every day. Where, like to your point, if we put that on a system where we could upgrade, future proof the power for the closet, monitor and manage and see what's going on in that closet remotely without having to be there, and be able to assess what power draws I have, what's going to fail, what needs to be turned over. All of that is not in use today for the most part in a lot of these organizations. So it's scary to think that, but again, I think our job is to raise the awareness and maybe bring some fruition to that to say, hey, not only could be a more efficient and power and future proof, but you know, also safer and protect the operation, pun intended, right?
yeah, and listen to that point, and we'll maybe we can add it to the podcast in terms of some pictures. But Eaton does have a full line of healthcare specific power strips, surge protectors, tablet charging carts that also while they're charging the tablets or sanitizing them as well, right? So somewhat of
Right.
niche products, but very specific to healthcare, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Be good for
part of the
school.
education process that we need to continue to bring out into the industry. So
Yeah. Who is it that said that? Our best customer is an educated customer.
exactly, Cy Sims, I think, right?
That's right.
Um, so it, I think one of the other things, and again, the ACE assessment is all of the three lines that we represent, right? So kind of maybe shifting into, what we're seeing from, the Corning perspective, and then we could talk about Airspan as well. But so, there's some certain things that, people have probably seen announcements of just different products out in the market. And again, I think we talked about how hyperscale is driving a lot of the demand
Hmm.
or supply chain constraints in certain cases, and then in other cases, they're not. But one of the things that we've seen, right? A lot of the preterm cables are MTP connectors, which most people are aware of, right? 8, 16, 12, 24 fiber connectors. But now, because of density, MMC connectors, which are much smaller form factor, have become prevalent in feeding GPUs specifically. So where you know hyperscale was is still the biggest focus for that type of connector in GPUs, but with a number of the clients that we deal with, they're in that space now, right? They're not hyperscale, they're enterprise,
Right.
but they're bigger than the typical enterprise. Some of them may be neo cloud, right? But it's how we're having conversations now about projects that they have on their dockets now and things that they're planning for even end of the year 2027. How do we help them deploy an infrastructure today that is going to be able to easily transition to those MMC connectors for at least the portions that are feeding the GPUs, right? So we're there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We weren't there 2 years ago, I would say. They kind of wanted to know about it, but we are in the thick of that now, right? So I think as part of what we've seen, certainly in the last 6 months, is a lot more conversation about those type of connectors, right? So
Yeah, yeah, I would
deploying
agree with
something.
that. And to add to that,
Uh,
Kenny, is sorry for interrupting you there, but I thought it was important
sure.
to add to the fact that especially in the financial community, and I would say also secondly, uh, the pharma community, and in some cases, higher
In
ed
healthcare,
and
and
healthcare
and yeah,
and healthcare, and even education, higher ed, because people like Princeton University have the advanced study for mathematics, and they're doing high modeling, high data requirements. But I would say just this week alone, I've talked to three customers, and two financial, one pharmaceutical, large global customers that are saying today that. Um, Hey, you know what? I really don't have a need because we do this technology update for customers, and we would do that for anybody out there. If they want us to come in, we can give you technology road mapping for power fiber and DAS systems, just to help future-proof the situation. But when we looked at AI, for example, AI wasn't a big footprint in our space. We knew it was coming. We knew that the financial institutions were going to have some sort of it, and it was trickling a little bit. But I think we're in the thick of it now, where they decided that they're going to build some of their own AI infrastructure within their own, data centers that they own, whether it be at a colo or whether it be at their own facility. But they're not taking it to the cloud where the hyperscalers are doing this in large volume. But they have sections in their data center now that are going to be, built. And we just did this for one client that just built four brand new data centers, and everything was standard infrastructure, standard power, standard fiber. And then all of a sudden they said, oh, you know what? We're going to have to build some AI stuff, and we're going to need more power, and we're going to need much more density because we've already committed the space, but now I have to allocate some space in my data center to build this AI infrastructure. So that's where we're going to see, the density potentially of an MC, but even more importantly, a busway system now on the power
Hmm.
side has to be implemented. So I look at this brand new data centers, and I already see retrofits within a data center that was built a year ago, where they cleared out space to put a bus system in, to put high density in, because that's what AI is going to require, and the NVIDIA chip, and not only NVIDIA chip, but everything else it brings, right? Too much power, heat. Now we have co-packaged optics that Corning's working on. We have the power that Eaton's working on. So, almost as quickly as we can think and discuss it, it's developing, right? And being implemented at the same
Well,
time.
well,
And
so
you
let's
have a couple of
yeah
customers doing that
let's kind of
as well.
yeah let's talk about a couple of those things, because I think that, again, for us, Edge 8 in a data center from a Corning perspective is where most of our customers have migrated to, and even some of the ones that were doing Edge, right, with 12 fiber connectors are now doing Edge 8. So for the reasons that we preached Edge 8 in the past, with not burning 4 strands on a MTP, now it
Yeah,
becomes.
just to reiterate, so the
Mhm.
community's clear. You said Edge 8, but when Edge came out, it was a pre-term 12 fiber, MTP solution. And that was prior to the standards being solidified as they are today, especially for spine and leaf and the speeds of the transceivers that we were going to be developed in the market to deploy. And we kept insisting this is the way to go. And then as we looked at it and the market started developing on the transceiver side and transmission side, it was obvious that Edge 8 was the solution, where we're using 8 fiber MTPs with, 4 transmit and receive lanes in them, because that's the protocol of the transceiver. And it goes right from, it started off at 10 gig to 40 gig to 100 gig. And now it's scalable all to 1.6, terabits in a data center, which is what we're talking about today at the AI speeds and the GPUs, et cetera. But it's just good to note that Corning, when they developed the Edge 8 solution, we stuck our guns on that and said, no, this is the roadmap. This future proofs you. If you wanted to wire a data center, it would future proof you at least for 20 years. We give a 25-year warranty and application guarantee to those speeds, and you'll never have to replace the infrastructure. You might have to add to it, but it's plug and play, because you're going to recycle equipment 3 to 5 years in that 25-year period of time. So you're going to have 5, 6 upgrades of total electronic equipment within that data center, and never have to change the infrastructure. And it's good to see that that stands today. And I don't even remember when Edge 8 came out, but I want to say it's probably 10 or
I think about
15
12
years
years ago.
old at this point, right? Somewhere in that slot.
Right.
So I would say at least for the last 10 years, we've been promoting, and for 20 years promoting Edge. But it's kind of good to see that, Corning really did that homework, and we really worked with our clients to look at future proofing, that infrastructure. And we could state today that to your point, that Edge 8 is still the way to go. And we've seen so many other vendors come out there, 12 and 24 and 16. And I remember, in about one data center customer that we were building, we stuck with the 8. Competition came in with 16, said this was the way to go. They almost went that way, but we were able to not only talk about Corning's design, but we were able to show them that all of the equipment manufacturers adopted this in their instruction manuals for fiber application for their specific equipment is Edge 8. So it's kind of fait accompli, but it's good to see that, you know, we did the right thing by our customers over time, as we always try to
Well,
do.
yeah. So fast forward till today now, right? Right. We were talking about, I call it the last mile, right? From that 8 fiber MTP connector into whatever
Maybe,
is there from a transceiver perspective, right?
maybe
So
the last
whether
500
you're
feet,
using a,
right?
yeah, whether you're
Maybe the
using
last
a,
500 feet.
yeah, right. Whether you're using a Y cable or some sort of a harness or whatever it is, right? Everything's going to lead back to where 8 fiber makes the most sense, and it's the most uh, elegant, cost-effective presentation into the GPUs. But kind of jumping on your point about where customers are using NVIDIA or they're using Cisco or you name it from a manufacturing perspective, right? How
Yeah,
closely
Arista,
Corning is
HP,
aligned,
Aruba. Yep.
right? How closely they're aligned with those manufacturers where you're looking at an NVIDIA cabling guide or a Cisco cabling guide or a Arista or whoever it is, and it says, okay, you deploy this from these electronics manufacturers. These are the Corning part numbers that you can use, right? I don't think any other manufacturer can say that where we're that closely aligned. Eaton is in that arena as well, and understands where the market is heading from that perspective. So I think that they also excel in in having those discussions. But I think it is a really important point to drive home as
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
assessing your needs today, but deploying something today so you're not doing a rip and replace, right? You can augment, you might have to run some more cables, but whatever you have there is going to work today and tomorrow. So um, I
And
think
again,
it's
I
an
think it goes along with
invaluable.
large organizations such as Eaton and Corning to have the capital and breadth and depth of talent to stay on top of the market, help affect the marketplace, and be able to react to changes quickly. I know they're big companies, but those two companies that we speak out about and have been representing for so long over time, whether it's an acquisition or a product development, they really do their homework and they can really turn that around pretty quick. Look at a company like Corning that does 1,200 patents a year. I mean, again, it's the research, the development, the commitment to that excellence that, you know, I think is something to really talk about with the client as opposed to, I always said this, if you go visit these companies and look at the research and the development and the labs and who they are and their facilities, and then go look at some of the competition, especially in the cabling business, right? Corning's a fiber company, but I would say they're not a cabling business. A lot of these companies that are selling fiber, doing copper as well, they're cabling businesses, and it's a different perspective on the amount of time, money, and resources that you have to spend to really be in that tier, like we are talking about, where you're scripting the infrastructure for NVIDIA and Cisco and doing all these and having the companies have the ability to have the faith in them to do that for them. So I think it speaks for itself.
Yeah, and so first I want to make a comment about Eaton. You look at the acquisitions they've made, right? Triple Eight, obviously, huge acquisition for them, kind of filled, routed out the portfolio from certainly from a power perspective, from a cabinet perspective, even the peripherals and some of the other things that they make. AOC cables, DAC cables, transceivers, things along those lines. Now you look at what's happened even in the last 12 months with clearly focus on data center driven large MTVCs, right? Fiber bonds with being able to portable, power units to help get a site up and running, quickly. But 3 to 5 days, I think, is what they said that they can build, one of those containers, right? And now, uh, you know, I think it was right before Data Center Dynamics, right? The deal became official for Boyd, right?
Avoid,
Liquid
yeah.
cooling, and Eaton was in the process, or is in the process of launching, rear door heat exchangers, right? So all of those things under that umbrella are just leading us down, this road and getting us more entrenched, right? Developing a global data center market or segment, I should say, which is great because a lot of the customers that we deal with are global in nature or certainly doing stuff outside of New York Metro as well, right? So it's just a
Yeah.
great opportunity for us. And then you bring Airspan into the mix and the technologies that they bring to bear, and where they affect things in private LTE and things other than just your traditional cellular networks. I think from our perspective, we are so well positioned with these companies as they exist today, and can't wait to see what other acquisitions and or product launches that get released over
Yeah.
the next
Yeah. And what's exciting about it, these are all specific items, for the market today, right? They're addressing the needs of
Hmm.
today, they're keeping up with it. But, in closing, we got 1 minute left, Kenny, but and we've covered a lot of ground here, but maybe just for the last minute, talk about it because MMC's obviously is going to be a game changer for density, et cetera. So give us a little
Hmm.
story about it as you just went through that with a client where you're in the design stages now of that. And if you had, you know, 30 seconds to just give the audience kind of a feel of what's different about that, what makes the change, why does that help, or whatever you think is important to talk about, in a snippet.
Sure. I mean, again, a lot of this is, I won't say AI driven, right? It is AI, but it's GPU based, right? So again, it's not just the
Right,
hyperscales that are deploying GPUs. Every one of our
right.
customers are deploying or will be deploying, very soon. So it's something that, obviously we need to be at the forefront, right? Uh, but if you look at the what that does from an impact perspective, from a density perspective, it's just solving that challenge of how do you get that much more cable into a GPU rack or cabinet, right? So
And what are we
uh,
talking about when we say increase the density? Because, with a 12 fiber MTP, we can get pretty dense, right? In a 1U, 2U, 4U space on a rack. What's the impact of that? Is it twofold, threefold, fourfold? What kind of added
it
density are
it
we
can be
looking
at
at?
least twofold, yeah, right? So if we go from a 12 fiber MTP to uh, a, a, a 24 fiber or even a 16 fiber MMC, with the way that those connectors are loaded into the modules, it's significant uptick in density. The other thing that's really going to accelerate or increase the density, um, is multi-core fiber now, right? Which Corning made a formal announcement about having a multi-core fiber.
That's right.
So if you think about that, within one strand of glass, right now you've got four cores, which essentially quadruples the capacity in that
Right,
same
right.
footprint, right? So if you
So
think
just
about
to,
it
just to
from,
pause there for a second so we can kind of give the audience a feel for that, right? So when I look
mhm,
at a 4U box, all right, four rack units on a rack, which real estate is very important on a rack today, and 4U's a lot of space on a rack. Um, on a traditional MTP, 12 fiber MTP base, or even Edge8 base, we have 3,456 strands of fiber in a 4U space. And what you're saying now is that, we need double that capacity. So an MMC connector could be a 24 fiber connector in that same space, double that space, right? So now we're up to, you know, over 10,000, I'm sorry, 7,000 strands of fiber almost in that same space. But to your point, now Corning has developed a multi-core fiber where we have four cores in one fiber where we only had one core. Now you can take that 7,000 strands, multiply that by four, right? So now we're looking at, you know, we're approaching, from 3,456 fibers to now almost 30 to 40,000 strands in that same space. Just to give you the audience kind of why is that an impact? And the reason that's an impact is because the first GPU needed 68 fibers, the second one needed 288 fibers. And to be honest, I don't even know what one we're on now, but we're already probably, looking at NVIDIA's backlog out to 2030 on their fourth, fifth, and sixth generation GPUs. And you may know better than I, but it just kind of shows you where it's scaling to, right? It's kind of
it,
crazy,
well, and at the same time, the
the power.
ODs of the cable, well, the outside diameter of the cables are getting smaller, right? Because of
Correct.
Corning's contour fiber, which is, a strand of glass that's three
Bend and
quarters of the
sensitive.
size of what it was, right? So when and it's
Smaller and
critical because
smaller and tougher. A lot of people don't realize how
smaller and
tough the
tougher,
fiber
right?
is. It's tougher than the copper.
Right, exactly. So again, and then you add the Eaton piece of this where, we're releasing and have released PDUs that are a one for one almost on a
Mm.
breaker to a receptacle, right? So the amount of power that's being delivered at that level as well. So it's mind-boggling to me, and I think that even being in the business and seeing what the growth was and where it is, and it's a hockey stick, but I feel like it's almost like it's
Still
going to be like the
mind-boggling.
Artemis, where it's going straight up as opposed to going this, so
Right,
it's
right.
just mind-boggling, right?
Covered a lot of ground there today, and
Hmm.
it's kind of fun to do this and know that we can still talk forever even after decades and decades of doing this. So really enjoyed it, and hopefully for anybody out there listening, please call us, and please look forward to our next podcast. Again, we're trying to bring value to the market and continue to do that. So we'll bring some guest speakers on, and
This has been great, and again, we talk about this, but our partners are critical to our business, so we'd love to have you reach out for us, and if you'd like to join us, and we could help tell your message and tell your story, I should say, and deliver your message out into the market, and kind of have some fun at the same time, and we'd love to hear from you as well.